but remember, proof of work is a 12-year-old technology that I don't think was ever envisioned to be where it is today. Proof of stake is just that leap to do the same work and better. Now, to your question on economics, if you're mining Ethereum versus on proof of work versus proof of stake, after 3 to 4 years, your residual value on mining Ethereum is zero. You have a bunch of machines that the CapEx, let's use actual numbers. Let's say you had $10 million and you start using that to mine Ethereum. So you take 6 million of that, order equipment, and then you'll save the other 4 for electricity costs over the next few years. And then you get rewarded on that by the Ethereum that you're mining. So at the end of 3 or 4 years, what you have left is that Ethereum that you mined, if you didn't have to sell it, okay, with the 10 million. But the initial CapEx residual value is zero. Let's now think about that in terms of proof of stake. In proof of stake, you have $10 million to stake Ethereum. You're going to take that 10 million, you're going to buy Ethereum. You're going to collect the same level of proportionate rewards for your staking as you would in proof of work. And at the end of 3 or 4 years, you will have that same amount of Ethereum that you've mined or staked. In proof of work, zero residual value, but in proof of stake, you're going to have all of that Ethereum left over, and any appreciation that's happened to it is going to continue to remain on your balance sheet. The economics are vastly superior to crypto mining, and it's environmentally clean.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
And I don't know if this can happen. I was thinking about this, we haven't seen a fork in Bitcoin in a long time, but what I would eventually, I think, see that if Bitcoin continues moving down this pathway, why couldn't you have developers work on a Bitcoin fork that shifts it to a proof of stake model? And again, you wouldn't be taking anything away from the Bitcoin, the 21 million, or any of the great things in Bitcoin. But what you're essentially doing is what Ethereum is doing is saying, we have an environmental issue here we'd like to address. Here's a way of using it, and where your CapEx is no longer machines and electricity, but is ownership of the coin. So here's the other great thing about proof of stake. One of the reasons proof of stake was developed, and this is another part that, again, proof of work is great, but it's antiquated technology. In the digital asset world, to do proof of work mining, I need to take digital, what might be for a lot of people, assets in the digital world, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other crypto. I have to convert it to fiat. I have to purchase the equipment in fiat. I have to pay for electricity in fiat. So all I'm essentially doing is I'm finding reasons to move capital out of the crypto digital world and into the fiat world, which is one of the reasons we love digital assets, is because we don't like fiat. Yet the proof of work mechanism is just encouraging money to flow out of the digital world into the fiat world. In proof of stake, you're keeping that capital within the digital world. You're taking it and you're using your CapEx to buy that asset to say, hey, I have a vested interest here. I'm aligned. I own this much Bitcoin or this much Ethereum or Polkadot or whatever it is. I want to ensure the value of what I've purchased, that CapEx, to use the proof of stake technology to get rewarded, to provide the work to validate and secure that blockchain, but my money never has to convert into fiat.
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar to a fixed deposit. I mean, you put your money and you're waiting for yields, and at the end of the term, you still have your money there. Your principal is not sunk in equipment and a bunch of.
Correct, and one of the things, I mean, and it's higher yield, but one of the good things about, people say, is it like a junk bond? No, it's not, because when you're doing the yield on a bond, you're taking counterparty risk. So if I buy a bond from Air Canada or whatever, I'm ultimately relying that that company will succeed and pay me back. In proof of stake, the custody of those coins, so if I'm staking Ethereum, it actually never leaves our possession. Okay? We're just delegating the voting system into the algorithm there. We're using technology. It never leaves our possession. We're just getting rewarded for validating the work. Same thing a crypto miner does.
This innovation in decentralized finance and this is literally a financial revolution that's taking place, and we're in the midst of it, and very fortunate to be part of this ecosystem. But with all this going on, it seems like Bitcoin's underlying code or technology, digital software or technology could have some flaws to it, right? And could be improved based on what we're seeing with Ethereum 2.0 and proof of stake method. You asked the question, why can't Bitcoin or the Bitcoin developers move into that direction? And do you feel like you have an answer to that?
Well, look, I'm not a technologist. I was an investment banker, but it would strike me that if you can fork into things like Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Lite, Bitcoin Cash, and all the rest of these, if you remember back then, really, you're forking. So for every Bitcoin, there's a development, you get one of the other, and then it's a little bit of a who's going to win. I don't know if the technology would exist to transition Bitcoin into a proof of stake down the road, but I would imagine that it must exist, as long as there's a consensus agreement around people wanting it to move there. I actually find a lot of what people would call the flaws in Bitcoin to be inherent benefits. So I like the fact that it processes less transactions per second. I don't think Bitcoin should necessarily be something you go to Starbucks and buy a coffee with. I like that it is, the limit, the blockchain is the longest one. It's the original cryptocurrency. So those are things that I think are benefits to Bitcoin, that it is very simple and it's brilliant design. Well, I'm not advocating that there is a change to the way Bitcoin is processed. Like, that's what Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and Lite tried to do, is they tried to say, great, why don't we create something that processes more transactions per second and does this and does that? Ultimately, I think you could argue those coins have failed. Nobody talks about Bitcoin Lite anymore, Bitcoin Cash. Like back in 2017, 2018, it was like, who's going to win? Today, it's all about Bitcoin. However, those were trying to change the basis and the foundation of what Bitcoin was, and they failed. I'm not suggesting that we need to change the foundation and how Bitcoin works, other than to just say that the way that it is secured and validated today requires a lot of electricity, and then it would be incumbent upon the Bitcoin community that if there's a way to make a transition the way Ethereum is over time to something that is a proof of stake model, I think that should be considered.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And trust me, there's going to be a lot of Bitcoin purists that will be, hating everything I'm saying right now. And I know that.
Yeah, no, but any reasonable person in his right mind that's, open to discuss things, I would say these are valid points that they need to be addressed, and there's always room for improvement. But if I understand this correctly, because I briefly started getting into proof of stake and understanding it, I understand it theoretically and conceptually, but don't you also need to keep some don't you also need computing power or some machines to continue running as you're staking, or on the machines that you're staking?
Totally, but it's in orders of magnitude difference. Like it is the difference between, you have a few computers running. In proof of work cryptology, it is that cost of electricity and the machinery that is considered to create the value and a baseline for the cost of Bitcoin. In the proof of stake, it is that ownership of it that is your risk capital. Because remember, in proof of stake, there's something called the slashing event. If you're acting nefariously, you can have some of the assets that you're staking be taken away if you're doing it wrong. So you're just moving the risk from one area to another. But of course, you need computers to do, we're using computers and electricity right now. It's in orders of magnitude difference. When I built up HUD 8, the Medicine Hat facility, which is 67 megawatts, that's enough to power small cities. Like literally, like this is was 11 acres of machinery attached to like electricity turbines and different things running electricity with, that site costs about $100 million to build. In proof of stake, the relationship is reversed. I mean, you're going to need some electricity, yes, for some computers, but there's no machinery involved. And yeah, you need some electricity to power up your computers and your lights, but it's not even comparable. The risk capital is the assets that you're buying and using to stake. And that is being replacing the machines and the electricity consumption used in proof of work.
Yeah, no, I love the concept of proof of stake. And, I'm all about community and all about, I studied political science at Concordia University. And that was really the basis of my mind, even before I entered university, was, socioeconomic constructs and sociology and how society interacts and how can you better society and communities. And I feel decentralized finance and Bitcoin mining and proof of stake are able to better communities. And within the mining industry, you see, areas around the world where there's a lot of wasted resources. And if you're able to, bring these resources and put them to use to generate energy that can power infrastructure that mines Bitcoin, for example, and then that Bitcoin can be used to, better the communities around that area. Do you see such projects being hurt? I mean, there's a net benefit to it, but there's still an environmental issue. But do you see that proof of stake can replace that large scale infrastructure to make better use of wasted energy?
So,
because there's a narrative there lately about,
there is a narrative there, and I'll get to it. So let's look. I don't know of a single new blockchain platform that's been built on proof of work in the last few years. Every significant platform that's being built is being built on proof of stake. And that includes, I forget what it's called now, but that Libra project, which was initiated by Facebook, which was exactly to what you're saying, which was to get into some of the smaller communities and benefit people in places that are less advantaged, right? That was part of the whole thesis around that. That was being built on proof of stake. Every major project today, Polkadot, Cardano, everything is on proof of stake. Okay, nobody today, it would be like coming in today and saying, I'm going to build a new computer and use a processor chip from 12 years ago. You wouldn't do that. With respect to Bitcoin mining, yeah, there's certainly an ability to use wasted or stranded energy. I know when I was at Hut 8, we looked at projects in places like Alaska and different places, but that thesis hasn't come to fruition yet. We looked at it. We looked at some of the flare gas stuff and this wasted energy and all this stuff. So number one, yeah, there's some places in Alberta that are flaring gas and everything, but it's very scattered. And I think the economics around that to do that in a profitable way would be challenging. Especially as the hash rate continues to go up. I think there's still substantial projects. One of some of the news that came out this weekend is that the Chinese government is looking to shut down the coal-powered Bitcoin mining in Inner Mongolia. Inner Mongolia is a province in China in the northern area. I've actually been there before, and there's a ton of coal being burned there. But if they're using that as an area to mine Bitcoin, and let me explain. One of the reasons people are still using coal to mine Bitcoin is coal-produced electricity is amongst the cheapest electricity you can produce, especially for coal-rich areas like Inner Mongolia. When I went to Inner Mongolia, you couldn't walk more than 12 feet without sweating, going like this, and you'd have a whole bunch of coal soot on your hands and all over your face. That's how polluted the place is. And so the fact that that's even going on, I know there's places like Kazakhstan, all these countries, like what I would call less developed countries that are saying, we don't care about the environmental impact of this stuff. We're just looking to find ways to utilize the resources we have because we're trying to catch up. And trust me, they're using up coal. You know, there's a reason even in Alberta now, natural gas